off air. Oh, it says starting. The Hangout on air is live. Okay. And I have a big red button to be able to stop it. So I don't know. Is anybody going to come and participate in this? I can't tell. Do you see a thing that says, oh, there's something about people waiting. I see a thing about people waiting. I got the chat.
I'm refreshing that page. Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Go ahead and type something in the chat to make sure it's working okay. All right. I think we got it working pretty quick this time. That was much smoother than last time. Just real quick, what I want to, so now let's go. We're going to go ahead and start. And I want to point out really quick that all of this is made possible by my folks at Patreon. I now have 2 Patreon accounts. I have one that is it's the old one that's now just for podcast stuff, and that one's just patreon.com/Paul Wheaton, and then I got a new one that's called patreon.com/pwvids. Oh, look, there's stuff. I see Monkey Man saying boss.
People are here.
Here they come. I'm just a quick note. I sent a gift out to all of my videos Patreon supporters. So that's PWVids. I'm not sure if any of the people logging in are part of the PWVids. But what I did is I sent everybody, for every $1 that they've given me for all time, I sent them a gift code for the Cobb style, building a Cobb style rocket mass heater DVD. And so for people that gave for all time, because it's relatively new, so they haven't put in a lot of money yet. For people that forked over $9, I sent them 9 gift codes. And so that's a thing that we're currently selling for $15 a pop. So I just wanted to say thanks. And then for the people that supported my podcast Kickstarter or my podcast Patreon page, I sent them between 4 to 36 gift codes, depending on how much their all-time contribution was. For people that had contributed at least $10 for all time.
Great.
And just a real quick mention that my top 3 all-time Patreon supporters, one of the first one has actually 3 names, Suleiman, Kerry, and Sasquatch. Did somebody name their child Sasquatch? And the next one's Bill Crim. And then the third one wishes to have his name appear as Kerry Just Too Lazy. For the thing that we're about to record, for the topic we're about to go into, which is going to be pretty much covering this chapter on honeybees, which is kind of really about colony collapse disorder and how the mystery is not that mysterious, and the solutions are very simple. But more than that, this whole chapter is kind of about animal care, because as you look at, like, if I were to write a book on how to care for hogs and write a book on how to care for cattle and a book on how to care for chickens, it's like there would be a lot of overlap between all of these. And the odd thing is that what we have to say about honeybees is very much the same as all of those. And so for the Better World book, we decided to eliminate those other chapters and just have a very short chapter, which I think is just 2.5 pages, on honeybees. I mean, there's a lot of people aren't going to be very concerned, but a lot of people are very concerned about colony collapse disorder. So we wanted to make sure to have this in there. I mean, you know, the book, we're doing everything we can to keep the book limited to 200 pages. Hey, look, I can see the chat stuff this time.
Great.
Somebody says, I'm in class at my high school. So I wonder if Monkey Man is a student or a teacher. I don't know. I would think that most high school students would not be able to tolerate that I exist in the world. So I'm guessing it's going to be a teacher, but maybe Monkey Man will tell us. Let's see. All right. What else? What other notes? Oh, we got to thank Jacqueline Freeman. So we took this chapter, we wrote the chapter, we sent it off to Jacqueline Freeman, who is in many of my videos and podcasts as I refer to as showing reverence for bees. And she gave a lot of excellent feedback, which we incorporated into the chapter. We incorporated probably about half of her feedback into the chapter. And actually, she wants to, he's 17 years old. You're 17 years old and and you follow an old git like me. I'm not sure if I'm impressed or worried or what. Am I? Maybe the other kids, if they find out about you, they're going to have to beat you up. But all right. I'm going to. So yeah, big shout out to Jacqueline Freeman. I'm in a tiny house with bees in one wall. Oh, it's Mr. Ettridge. So Mr. Ettridge, you have a bee heated home because bees like to keep their colony at about 96 degrees. So when you put your hand on that wall, doesn't it feel really warm? I mean, if you're in a tiny house and you've got bees in a wall, I imagine you might not need any other heat source. Although I am curious what part of the country you're in right now, because if it's a tiny house, it can be moved around. I seem to remember you were in Florida at some point, which means that what you'd really want is a way to cool your home. But all right. Other notes that I have, Kickstarter will begin in mid-January. So Shawn and I have been planning on our Kickstarter starting on January 2nd. We're having, let's see, Monkey Man. I'm more popular now because I'm publicly a hippie. I cycle 1 to 2 miles to school. I used to ride my bike 10 miles to school when I lived with my aunt and uncle. I'm totally serious. I did.
Not that it's a competition, of course.
Right. No, there's people that did far, far more. I would, it took me about the same amount of time to ride my bike to school as it would take the bus to deliver me. So I really didn't gain anything. And the bus would usually pass me at some point because they have to stop and pick up all the other kids and the stuff. But I just loved my bicycle so much. Timothy, Mr. Ettridge is in Florida. Yes, the bees feel warm. And Matt is saying bee heated home. Yeah. And in fact, I had this idea for the Wofati. We had to change the uphill wall, take out the old uphill wall. One of the ideas is to put in a double wall and between the two walls to set things up so that there could be a collection of beehives there, which would effectively heat the home. But of course, with the Wofati, we need to be able to test that the annualized thermal inertia. Monkey Man says same. He's in Oregon. So actually, I was in Oregon when I was riding my bike. I was outside of LeGrand, Oregon, and I would ride to LeGrand High School. So long ago. But it was also an era when bicycles were not considered cool, so I was a nuisance on the road. There's other people in Oregon. I've a whole bunch. Everybody from Oregon's chiming in. Oh, and then here's somebody from the UK. So it's got to be like what 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's tea time in the UK, isn't it? Okay, all right. Hey, we got to do a podcast thing here. We got to do this. He's this guy Matt. He's in Portland, and I'm thinking of using. Okay, I gotta stop reading the chat. You read the chat stuff, and so then you insert the chat stuff. So I'm doing I'm here. I'm recording a podcast, which is on YouTube video, so people watching YouTube right now can see me. And I alerted the Patreon people on when we're doing this. So this time it's a Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. and we didn't tell anybody else. And then I think that anybody who would be subscribed to my YouTube channel and click the bell probably got an email when we started this off.
Yeah.
And we did this once before. And now Bill Crim has set up a system, and he's saying, okay, give me more podcasts. I'm going to process them. So last time it took a while because it was Bill's first podcast to process. And now it's sounding like he's able to do more. And so we're going to do, oh, look, I see Eugene. So I lived in Eugene for a while. I went to college there. And only now they don't say they go to college. They say you go to university.
I thought they were talking about someone they knew named Eugene. Sorry, Oregon people.
Oh, I thought it was Eugene, Oregon. So
well, it probably is. I just don't know my Oregon geography. But hey, there's another Canadian here.
Oh yeah, so you've got okay. So you got some Canadian company. Good. Shawn's a Canadian. We're talking to him in Canada. What part of Canada are you in?
Manitoba.
Okay. I don't know where that is.
We're above North Dakota.
Oh, okay. All right. So cold country.
Cold country.
All right. I was pointing out that the Kickstarter will begin in mid-January. We were telling people that it was going to be like January 2nd, but we've had delays with the video part, and there's all right, so mid-January is the current plan. Yeah. Also, we don't have all of the chapters done yet. I think we got 2 left, which included the one we just spent all morning working on. Is that right?
3.
There's 3 left. I thought we had 3 left, and we got 1 to the point that we pushed it out.
Yeah, and then I think I found one that I lost.
Oh my!
Actually, yeah. So.
Oh no! And so one of the things I feel very strongly about is that we do not start the Kickstarter until all of the chapters are done. And we've got, and that does not include the artwork. And we had some new artwork to look at today.
That's right.
So we're getting, we're getting really, really close. And but I think that what's going to be the holdup for 2 weeks is not the book, but like getting the chapters done, but getting, the steps. We started the process for getting the video over a month ago. I think it was a month and a half ago. Yeah. And many of the things that we tried did a faceplant. And so, because we wanted to make a better video than what I could make. And so that might still happen where I have to make the video, which will be not as fun, I think, as what others can do. All right, let's see. Very much want feedback on this chapter. And so we're going to ask people to please leave comments on the YouTube video. Leave comments on the thread for the podcast. So eventually this is going to, hopefully, within 3 days, this recording will be mashed into the MP3 format with all the other editing and stuff that goes on, and then go into the pipeline for the podcasts. And that means that there'll be a thread at Permies about the podcast, and people can comment on that. And then the Secret Inner Circle forum. And so on Permies, there's a forum called Secret Inner Circle, which is available only to people that supported our past Kickstarters at $5 or higher, or certain past Kickstarters at $5 or higher. And you've already put this chapter up there. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. So
the people that have supported the Kickstarters in the past, which I know some of the names I've seen go by, I do know that they have access to that forum. And so then you'll be able to read this chapter as we go through it yourselves right now. And please give us feedback on it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to jump into it. Anything else? Any other notes, Shawn, before we jump into this?
Nope, let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, somebody's saying Eugene, Oregon. Somebody says, I got a bell. I'm sorry, I'm reading this. I said I wasn't going to read this. Look at all these notes. Look at all this stuff. I'm a YouTube subscriber. Click the bell. Regina.
Regina.
Oh, Regina. Rhymes with,
Yes.
yeah. All right. The solutions to colony collapse disorder are embarrassingly simple. And so we start off by quoting Bill Mollison saying, though the problems of the world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. In 2006, beekeepers began reporting that their bees were disappearing en masse. The bees appeared to just leave the hive and never come back. The reports kept coming in, and the losses being reported were as high as 40%. Of course, the first question that gets asked in such a situation is, what is causing it? Some research suggests that it is a virus or a fungus or a combination of both. Other research suggests it is increased pest pressure, and other research suggests that it is neonicotinoid insecticides being used on crops. Yeah, just a quick thing. I mean, there's so many things that are disturbing, but for nearly every pesticide, especially insecticides, the LD50 rate is usually very high. It's toxic.
Yeah.
But this is part of a variety of pesticide that is systemic in the plant. It is throughout the plant, in all of the plant. And so if you eat this plant, you are ingesting something with an LD50 rate. When I did my master gardener training, it was really disturbing to find out how toxic this stuff is, how bad it is for you. You start learning about LD50 rates and the like, and then you start to learn that some of these toxins are cumulative. And so then, you can only expose a human being or a mammal to it for so much before the mammal dies. And it's like, but the whole concept of like, here's an insecticide that is systemic through the plant. So the idea is that, but anyway, all right. I don't want to be, and it seems like too often I get into this whole thing where we're trying to talk about a positive permaculture thing, and we end up just talking about poisons. And so, it's so disturbing. It's so frustrating. All right. Continuing on. And so here's the thing. I don't think it's just one thing or even three things that are causing the problem. I think that if the bees have poor nutrition, get covered in poison in the field, have poison in their home, and face all sorts of other stresses, each of these is going to weaken them. At some point, all of the stresses are just too much. My friend, Jacqueline Freeman, wrote an excellent book called Song of Increase, Listening to the Wisdom of Honeybees for Kinder Beekeeping and a Better World. Hey, that kind of fits with our book, doesn't it?
It sure does, yeah.
In her book, she tells the story of watching a bee returning from foraging and being barred from entering by the colony's guard bees. After so many foraging flights, the bee's wings were tattered. After 2 refusals by the guards, the old bee acknowledged the assessment of the guard bees and did a voluntary walk the plank maneuver, falling from the hive and ending up plop on the ground. Aside from the tattered wings, the bee looked okay to Jacqueline. She thought the guards must have made a mistake. So she picked up the bee and put it back at the hive entrance. But the bee was committed to leaving the hive and walked right off the edge, never to return. Jacqueline believes the old bee embraced that maybe the greatest contribution to the colony would be a voluntary departure, Honeybees cannot survive without a colony. So the old bee was likely dead by morning. I'm tempted to stop, but I actually want to get through 2 more paragraphs before we pause for a moment. Jacqueline also believes that although most bees live only 6 weeks, a colony of bees maintains a memory that goes back decades, maybe more. You might want to read her book to better understand how that might be possible. But for now, my next point embraces this idea. The goal of each colony is to thrive, grow, and then swarm to create new colonies. Because of their generational memory, a colony might know that they are not thriving as previous colonies have. Therefore, something is wrong with this colony. And maybe the greatest contribution to future colonies would be a voluntary departure. I suspect that it is not calculated or reasoned so much as there is some sort of instinctual metric that measures growth, and some sort of fail alarm goes off when the conditions are bad enough. All right. So Shawn, I can see the comments pouring by. I see Monkey Man saying, "Stop fucking with the bees."
Yeah.
Anything to share? Any of the comments that you feel are particularly like, let's jump on that one?
Not at this time. We'll circle back later.
Okay. All right. The important point is that, and we've got it in all bold, that when it was the single bee, it says maybe the greatest contribution to the colony would be a voluntary departure. And then when talking about the idea of the entire colony, maybe the greatest contribution to future colonies would be a voluntary departure. So that's why I wanted to keep going. I mean, a big thing is that, and this is apparently a mystery to people, is the whole concept of you get to the hive and nobody's home. There's just a few dead bees.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, where did they all go? They're not there. And it seems like a thing where they can't seem to explain why they're not there. I mean, if they were simply poisoned, then wouldn't the hive be packed with dead bodies? So
right.
I wanna do a shout out for Jacqueline's book. It's so very good, and I've got a podcast about Jacqueline's book. I've also got, I believe, several podcasts with Jacqueline talking about honeybee care, and of course several videos. And it's like it is an extremely different way of thinking about caring for honeybees. And when I made a colony collapse disorder video, like, I don't know, I think it was 8 years ago. I think it was in 2010 I put it up, and it's with Jacqueline. And it's got a lot of elements in it that where I think people won't believe that it's true. So for example, I believe that even the people that are watching this, probably half of them would not believe until this moment that most honeybees in the United States are put on giant semi-trucks every year and moved at least 5 times per year. And it's like, so what they do is they move from pollination to pollination point. So it's like the most famous one being almonds. So when you consume anything with almonds in it, then they bring in thousands of semi-truckloads of bees, and they're there for the pollination of the almonds. And then they move to the next pollination, and the next pollination, and the next pollination. They get moved all around the country. And so, it's so disturbing, so creepy, so weird. But I had to put pictures in it, and I also had to put conventional beekeepers in there where I'm interviewing them, and they talk about this migration of the bees. So it's such a critical thing. So we're gonna get into this a little bit more. But Jacqueline's book, in fact, I'm going to read the next paragraph. Jacqueline's book is called The Song of Increase because the colony makes a different sound for each general colony-wide activity. The best sound is the sound made during strong, vibrant, healthy growth, the song of increase. I suggest that there's a different sound that signals disperse. Maybe some of the bees join other colonies, but most, including the queen, simply go alone and die quickly. This is my theory on why the colony collapse disorder hives are not full of dead bees, but are simply empty. When I first got Jacqueline's book, I was feeling like this is a stupid title. I mean, we need to get this book into more hands, more eyeballs, more brains. And I feel like the title is so bad that people aren't going to pick it up. And so now it's a hurdle for people to get to the book. And then after I read the book, then of course I realized it's the best possible title in the world. It's an amazing title. And of course, Jacqueline is a person who has spent, I want to say, hundreds of hours, possibly even thousands of hours in a chair next to the bee colonies. So the hives, the physical hives. When I have visitor, every time I have visitor, there's like not just chairs next to the hives, but there's chairs and tables and snacks. And obviously there's been some beverage activity. It's pretty clear somebody's putting in a lot of time sitting here. And so this is not just simple observation. This is massive and intense observation. This is a huge amount of observation. And her book shares the detail of her observation, and then it touches into the way conventional beekeepers manage their beehives, and why that is not okay, and what kind of problems it causes. And we have, so all right, this whole chapter is squeezed down to 2.5 pages. But I think this is also a great example of how we are working our butts off to compress so much into just a few pages,
yes,
because there's so many little details that we're touching on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Jim in the UK says, sounds like we're going to need a lot of bee watching to figure it out. My response to Jim is, Jacqueline did a lot of that, and we can say, thanks, Jacqueline.
Yeah, so now you can read her book and save all that time, and you can go and observe something else and share it with all of us the way Jacqueline shared what she learned about bees.
Yes.
With that in mind, okay, so I'm going back to reading the chapter. With that in mind, I think that the entire solution to colony collapse disorder can be summed up in 4 words. Stop stressing the bees. While conventional beekeepers lose 40% of their colonies annually, organic beekeepers report 10% losses, and beekeepers who follow treatment-free methods using feral bees tend to have near 0 losses. The more in line with nature the practices are, the lower the losses are. Just real quick, Shawn, could you look up the thing that we wrote today about, remember how I said something about how like inspiring a Disney movie, featuring a little girl and the animals on her homestead?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. I kind of feel like one of the things that we wrote today was something about animal care and in fact, it's a chapter called something like "Animal Care for Vegans," or why vegans would benefit from having animals in their gardens. And we tried to make a list of like levels of animal care. Do you have that, Shawn?
I'm still going. My computer is
okay.
Taking its time.
I think, because the important thing is that there's what the conventional farmers do, which is going to be, like a CAFO. They're going to have those chickens in those cages that go on for miles, or they have a big thing that looks like a giant warehouse, and it's like millions of chickens as far as the eye can see, and they're all standing around in their own shit and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, let's do that same thing, but let's make it organic. So it's still a nightmare, but it's an organic nightmare. And then the next step up from that is what most people do when they raise animals at home, which I think is still awful, but better than what the factory farms will do.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
You said you're looking for something that would inspire a Disney movie about a little girl, possibly named Gert, and all of her animal friends.
So there's a list. So could you just read off the list that we wrote this morning?
Yeah, sure. So we talked about the factory farms. We talked about what most people do when raising their own animals. And we talked about how what we want to do is provide a life that's better than living in the wild. And then we wanted to explore what does it mean to be like have really pampered animals, so even better than life that's better than living in the wild. And then we get to Disney princess level. I suppose it doesn't have to be a princess.
I don't think it's a Disney princess thing. I was thinking like it might be an after-school special or something like that, but it's basically So let's see. If I remember correctly, it's farms. So it's like factory farms.
Yeah.
And then organic factory farms. Then what most people do when they raise animals. And then the next item on the list, I think, is setting all the animals free.
That's right.
And then the next item on the list is to provide the animals with something better than if they were let loose in the wild.
Yeah.
And then the next item on the list was to pamper all the animals. And then the final item on the list was something so good that Disney would be inspired to make a movie about this little girl and her animals on her homestead.
That's right.
And so it's like that's our ultimate there. And so I kind of feel like that sentiment applies to the chapter that we're reading now, but this chapter kind of moves past that and we address it in actually a very different way. Okay. While conventional beekeepers lose 40% of their colonies annually, organic beekeepers report 10% losses, and beekeepers who follow treatment-free methods using feral bees tend to have near zero losses. The more in line with nature the practices are, the lower the losses are. My suggestions for healthy bee colonies. Number 1, when a colony is struggling, the conventional beekeeper looks to attack and kill the problem. Most problems are an aspect of nature working as it is supposed to. Focus on long-term, natural bee health instead of attack and kill. I think that this applies to nearly everything. And so it's kind of like, okay, this animal is sick. So here's a cow. It's obviously sick in some fashion. It's got a horrible cough. And so, well, our instinct is like, well, let's shoot it full of antibiotics. And so whatever is causing the cough, we will attack and kill that. Instead, and it's like, I like the way Sepp Holzer approaches it. It's that, okay, this animal is sick because I have done something stupid. And there is something in this environment that is making it so that this animal is sick. So I need to do a better job of taking care of this animal. And then when I do that, when I achieve that, then this animal will be healthier. So rather than the mentality of attack and kill the problem, recognize that the bacteria or whatever it is that's giving the animal the cough or making the animal sick is a part of nature. It's a part of nature that's doing its job to take out the weak. You know, like this animal isn't supposed to, you know, be here. This whole situation isn't working out. So I'm here as an agent of nature to correct the scenario. This animal didn't make the cut. Yeah. This animal, you know, isn't supposed to be in this situation. And so let's eliminate this animal from the situation. That's nature. Yeah. And so it's like, so basically, nature is, when that animal is sick, if it's a mild sickness, then maybe nature is giving you a C in providing a good environment for this animal. If the animal dies, nature gave you an F. You suck. And so, but then if you're reaching for the antibiotics, then you're basically saying like, yeah, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to, you know, screw nature. Nature doesn't know what the hell she's doing. And so, but of course, once you start down this path of working against nature, it's a very challenging road. Permaculture is all about making things easier for you. All right. So number one for healthy bee colonies, you got to change your mentality so it's not the attack and kill. Any other fun comments coming in over here, Shawn?
People are snoozing. Or making
okay. Yeah. All right. Number two, bees get mites. Conventional beekeepers use poison in the hives in the hopes of killing more mites than bees. Many treatment-free beekeepers have proven techniques that show that the stress of a few mites is far less than the stress of these poisons. Somebody is saying pirate. Why are they saying pirate?
They're trying to see if they can get you to do this whole thing with the pirate accent.
Arg?
I suggested that maybe if you get enough Patreon supporters, I can start to convince you to add in custom accents.
I can't do a custom accent. I
might pay money just to watch you try.
I can make stupid voices, but those stupid voices are not tied to anything in reality. So like if I try to do a pirate voice, I'll end up with something else that is not a pirate voice. It's like sometimes I make little accents and somebody says, is that you trying to do an Irish accent? And it's like, no, no, that's me. I thought of a stupid character in my head to make a stupid voice. I don't know where that person's from. So, all right. Item number 3, do not buy conventional packaged bees. These bees are bred for scale and not for strong genetics. And they are often dependent on chemical defenses instead of natural defenses. Catching a local feral bee swarm will bring you bees that are naturally strong for your local conditions. All right. Oh, and then Monkey Man wants me to do all the voices all at once.
Yeah. That'll sound great in the podcast later.
So the thing is that and not only that, but have you ever seen the video? It's like there's a couple of of new documentaries in the last 10 years that have come out about colony collapse disorder and managing honeybee, stuff. And I remember in one of them, it was like, okay, so here we're going to artificially inseminate a queen bee.
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, so basically what we're looking at is literally bee rape. And it's like, so here's a queen bee that's being held in, like, looks like with something that looks like pinchers. And so the queen bee cannot move. And a human being, like, opens her up and squirts in, like, I guess, bee semen. And it's kind of like, oh man, that was really creepy to watch. That was like fucked up. And it's like, but this is apparently what the conventional beekeepers prefer. Now, of course, and then when you hear the story of like how queen bees naturally mate, I mean, it's a combination of something that sounds really magnificent and beautiful that could be its own Disney movie, followed by watching Highlander. There can be only one. So usually there's like from any hive, like there was a swarm. There was swarming. So the old queen took like 2/3 of the worker bees and left, because this is how bees naturally reproduce. And they left behind 5 queen cells. So at some point in time, the 5 queens will emerge. They will all go up into the sky and mate with drones while midair. I mean, that's got to be quite the ballet.
Yeah.
And what a magnificent and beautiful thing, especially compared to conventional. And then comes the Highlander part, where the 5 return and there can be only one. I believe they don't use swords, but they will combat to the death. And there can only be one surviving queen. And that's the new queen for the colony. All right. And then if you want to, I mean, there's things that you can get, these little boxes that you mount in different places. And then when a colony swarms, and so that means that, more than half of the colony leaves to start a new colony, and then the old colony does the 5 queen thing, then you can potentially capture that very strong, very vibrant, very healthy colony and start a new hive. There's a technique for that. And then other places, I mean, you can see it happen sometimes. Some people have seen it. We've seen it once here at my place, where a swarm left, and then there's a swarm in a tree, and then they're looking for a new home. And once they find a new home, then the whole swarm moves to the new home. And we tried to put out like an empty beehive, but they opted to not go into our empty beehive. I think it was too close to the original was the problem.
Yeah. Okay. What's our next one here?
All right. Yeah, I could probably talk for another couple of hours about bee genetics and how to, all that stuff. But no, number 4. Conventional beekeepers force a cell size that leads to larger or smaller bees. Thus, contrary to their natural size, by using pre-made plastic foundation, allow bees to pick their own cell size. Oh man, this is a huge topic. I mean, I'll bet that there's probably 4 books out right now that's just about cell size. And the earlier books were about like, you know what? I'll bet you there's even more than 4. But the earliest stuff was about like, hey, if you make your bee cell size bigger, then your bees will make bigger bees. and then they'll be able to bring more honey in. You know, they're going to be, you know, bigger, harder working bees. And then the next step that came after that was about, oh, I'm seeing some stuff in the chat about stings. Okay, I'll come back to that. I want to talk about bee sting stuff, but just a sec. So then the next thing that they found out is because the bee cell size was bigger and they were getting bigger bees, that means that they were inside of the cell longer during the pupa stage. And so they were getting more mites. It was making it easier for the mites to get started and to be parasites onto the bees. So then people started saying like, okay, no, set the cell size smaller. And then that led to different. So basically the key is stop trying to define the cell size for the bees. Just let the bees do their own cell size thing. Okay. Whatever you're trying to do, you're just going to make a mess. Just leave them alone. Here in Montana, there was a lovely couple. They've both been here several times. We've met with them several times. We had a great relationship with them, and they had a beehive, and they were so happy. And then one day, she went out, and she was attacked. She had like dozens of stings and had to be hospitalized. She wasn't allergic to bees, but she just had so many stings that she had to go and go to the hospital. And it turns out that they had bought a colony, you know, through mail order and had it sent. But then because of colony collapse disorder, there's gotten to be this dramatic shortage in colonies. And so apparently some places have, I mean, they're just producing as many bees as they can. And so they had, it's like if there's 5 queens, they keep all 5 queens. They don't go through there can be only one thing. And you know about the queen rape and stuff like that. But so what they ended up with was a colony that apparently was, and it was a new colony that they had on their property in Montana. And they came to the conclusion that it was the Africanized bees, or it was a mix, a cross between Africanized bees and others and whatever. There was enough of the Africanized thing that she was attacked. They were an extremely aggressive, defensive breed of bees. Yeah. And so it probably, they because of the Africanization, they probably wouldn't have survived a Montana winter. But then, of course, whoever sold them the colony doesn't care because
sell them more next year.
Yeah, exactly. What a racket! But they ended up having to gear up and burn the colony just for the safety of themselves and their children.
Oh,
yeah. What an awful thing to have to do. I mean, I'm not sure. I probably would have tried something different. I don't know what. And so therefore I probably shouldn't say anything at all. But I think, you know, be wary of what you buy. So people were talking about getting stung. And so I kind of wanted to mention that. One time I was at Jacqueline's, I was wearing my full bee suit, which is a custom bee suit because they don't make bee suits in my size. It's like they took a bee suit that was for somebody really fat, which, you know, I confess I'm really fat. And then it had to be modified to be long enough. I did not fit into it as it came. Because I'm a giant. But so while I'm all protected next to the hive and I'm watching Jacqueline's amazing techniques and caring for these bees, apparently Jocelyn was about, I don't know, 50 feet away, and a bee flew up her nose and stung her inside the nose. It's like not a place you want to get stung.
No.
All right.
Number 5.
Number 5. You're wanting me to hurry up.
Oh, I'm just trying to help you along.
Oh, good. Thank you, sir. weak colonies dependent on medications or unable to defend themselves against predators must be allowed to die out, thus improving the gene pool. This kind of reminds me of Daniel Salatin's work with rabbits. And so Daniel Salatin is the son of Joel Salatin, the very famous, very amazing Joel Salatin. And so I think when he was a kid, like 9, Daniel decided he's going to raise rabbits. But he did not want to do all of the stuff with all of the medications for rabbits. So all of the breeding stock that he had was dependent on the medications. And so the Salatins intentionally did not share this many years that this young fellow went through to get to the point that he had a breed of rabbits that didn't need all the medications. So they went through many years of 90% die-off. But now this is different from colony collapse disorder. I mean, with colony collapse disorder, you're going to have an empty hive. There's just nobody there. Or if your bees die from something, then evidence of that something is there. And so, you know, the thing is like, okay, because I know we were talking about like for these techniques, the die-off rate or the, you know, from colony collapse disorder is practically 0.
Right.
And it's like, but we're going to go ahead and I'm just noticing that on the chat, they're just kind of going crazy with bee puns.
Yeah.
I'll be right back there, misbehaving. And then ouch, I'll be okay, buzz off. Yeah, okay. Have fun, guys. Have fun. All right. All right. So I was doing
right.
number 5.
Okay.
Yeah. What was the point I was making? What was I saying?
I think the point you were trying to make was we're talking about how, like, if you follow these practices, you'll have near 0 losses.
Right.
But I think what you're about to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you'll have near 0 losses after 3 years of potentially having quite a few losses.
Yeah,
as
no,
you work on these genetics.
I think that's part of it. And so we have a colony up here now in our hive, and I was giving a tour, and during the tour, the colony was under attack from yellow jackets, and so somebody, you know, was like, well, you know, what are you going to do about that? And it's like, you're looking at it. I'm going to do nothing about it. In the end, either the honeybees will be able to defend the colony, or the yellow jackets will win. Either way, that's the outcome that I want. I mean, so it's like, you know, what I would like to be able, you know, I do want to get to the point where I've got like, you know, 20 colonies up on the lab, hopefully managed by 20 different people, like each one, like one colony per permie. And then, yeah, if we're going to lose a lot, and hopefully all of those will have started from a feral colony, but like the focus needs to be on strong genetics.
Yeah.
And not genetics that are mass produced, and then you spend all your time having to care for them. So, all right, number 6, migratory beekeepers chase bloom and move their hives thousands of miles every year. Keep hives in a fixed location year-round. So we were talking about that earlier, and how a lot of people, maybe a lot of people reading our book, Shawn, won't believe that there is such a thing as migratory beekeepers, or that 90% of the honeybees, I think it's even like 96% of the honeybees in the United States are part of a migratory beekeeper thing. So right. I know that in my colony collapse disorder video, I was videoing these guys that have like 25,000 hives, or they have 9,000 hives, and their whole job is to move them around with the bloom.
Right.
All right. Any fun notes from all of the chat over there?
Some questions about winter, but maybe we'll cover that in one of these notes again.
Okay, let's get through the notes first. Number 7. Conventional beekeepers take nearly all of the honey and feed sugar water to the bees. Bees are made to eat their... Bees are made... So I think we need... I think, Shawn, I think we need to make a note on this one. Instead of bees are made to eat their own nutritious honey. So it needs to be... Bees are made to eat their own nutritious honey, not sugar water. Take less and allow the bees to eat their own honey. There you go. So there, Shawn fixed it. Bees are designed to eat their own nutritious honey, not sugar water. Take less and allow the bees to eat their own honey. So it's conventional to feed them sugar water. And on top of that, if you try to feed your bees like honey that you bought from the store, there's a couple of big problems with that. One is most honey that you buy, it says right on it, honey. And it turns out that it's only, generally, it's only 10% actual honey. The rest of it is high fructose corn syrup. And so it's like, what a bizarre thing. They can actually do that, where it's like, it says honey, and it's not. It's hardly any.
Imagine buying like apples, and it was only actually 10% apple.
So the next thing is that the honey that might actually be in that honey is probably loaded with all kinds of diseases, because these other bees are infested with diseases which are constantly being fought off with all sorts of medications. And so there's a very good chance that whatever honey you bring into your hive in that fashion is going to make all the bees sick. So don't do that. You got to leave the bees with their own honey, and then you're just going to harvest less. Which for a lot of people, they're thinking like, well, how am I supposed to make money? Well, your conventional beekeeper makes most of their money by moving the hives around to the different bloom cycles, to the different pollination cycles. And then their secondary income is the honey, which is a big focus. So they're like, how could I maximize the amount of honey coming out? So I'm kind of thinking that the thing to do is going to be to let the bees eat most of their honey, and then the amount of honey that you harvest is just less. And if you follow these techniques, you might find that you actually get more honey than if you did a conventional technique and kept all of the honey.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. Number 8. Plant lots of 3-season nectar forage so the bees don't have to travel far for food. So we had a beekeeper come by here and said, hey, do you mind if I put like 20 hives on the lab? And I'm sure you've all seen this, where you'll go someplace and it's like, look over there, you can see like 40 hives all in a bunch right there. And it's like, yeah, you do that, and the bees can totally do that. They'll go miles to go and get nectar to bring back honey, and the nectar and the pollen and all the other stuff that they harvest to bring back to the colony. They'll totally do it. But that's harder and more stressful than if there was just one colony in that spot instead of 40. Now they don't have to go nearly as far. And so that's less stressful. They'll actually put more honey in that hive. And further, if you go to the trouble to plant a magnificent garden that's packed full of 3-season nectar, then the distance that they travel is even shorter still. Now, another thing that people talk about is like, okay, I want my honey to be organic. And so I've worked very hard on my property to do everything super organic. But those bees go off property to some place that's not organic, and so they're bringing back this nectar that is not organic. And so, okay, step one, do what I did. Get enough acres out in the middle of timber company land or forest land or, Forest Service land. So that way, if the bees do go many, many miles, they're not encountering non-organic stuff. Yeah. But the next thing, which is even more important, is that do one colony in a spot surrounded by 3-season nectar by a magnificent garden. And now they don't have to go very far at all to get all the nectar. So they could still go that 4 miles away to where there is something less than organic happening, but they probably won't. In fact, 90% of their harvest is, if you follow all these techniques, will probably be well under 1/4 mile, because there's no reason to go farther. So that's a technique to make life better for the bees, more luxuriant. Okay. Number 9. Do we have any new questions, new stuff to talk about? Beehives per acre. I see something about beehives per acre.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this next one's about.
Oh, okay. All right. Number 9. Keep hives a few hundred feet apart. In nature, colonies live great distances apart. This reduces the need to compete for nearby food and prevents bees from drifting into other colonies and spreading pests and diseases. So, I think our bee hut, our sole bee hut that we have at this time, currently we have, I think, 2 hives there, but one of them is empty, which is cool. And we'll probably leave it that way. But rather than, trying to get like, it'll hold 3 hives if we really wanted to push it, but I don't want to travel that road. I would much rather travel a road of so having them several hundred feet apart. So on the 200 acres of the lab, then I think it would be good to have maybe 1 hive. I mean, let's suppose that the whole site has 40 people living year-round on the site. And so let's say that there are 15 people that are stewarding honeybees. So I kind of like the idea that maybe on average each person might have 2 colonies that they manage. So we're talking about 30 colonies that are known in known hives for 200 acres. I think that is an excellent ratio. That still leaves plenty of nectar forest for the wild pollinators. So, and that's another thing. A lot of people get very concerned about, like, if you bring in too many honeybees, then you'll displace the native or feral pollinators. And I think that that's a good point. And so part of it is like, let's make sure that we grow such a jungle that we're providing so much for the honeybees that there's still plenty. There's still basically the same amount as ever for the feral pollinators. Okay. Oh, there's something about, I heard 200 yards between hives is maximum closeness. I think 200 yards, that's I'm gonna, again, it depends. It's like, if it's just 200 yards of open space and it's all kind of a monocrop going, well, yeah. But I think that if you've got lots and lots of permaculture jungles and gardens and the land is just thick with growies, because all the good permies, I think that you could probably drop that down to, I'm going to say 200 feet. So that would make for what, 27 times more hives? So, all right. Oh, Sepp said we should harvest in the spring, but I have to reduce to 2 supers for the fall. Not sure how to work this out. Yeah, if you've got a super heavy honey load in the fall, it might be wise to take a couple supers out. Otherwise it's kind of like the colonies, because the colony is going to concentrate inside of the hive into a ball, trying to keep themselves warm. So the honey above will be okay. But typically, if you shrink it down a little bit, then that's less space to keep warm, and at the same time, it's easier for the bees to keep it warm. So, but generally, I think a general rule is harvesting honey in the spring, as a general rule. But there could be exceptions. Okay, number 10, strong, healthy plants grown in a polyculture have richer, higher quality nectar. Feed bees polyculture blossoms. Okay, we've got, don't we talk about polyculture quite a few times in the book. I don't know, I don't think we have a chapter dedicated to polyculture, but I know we have at least a section dedicated to polyculture. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I believe that the superfood for all of us, including bees, is going to come from polyculture. I think I've got an essay from 10 years ago up on Permies about how I think that 90% of our modern medications can be replaced with polyculture food. All right, number 11. Stop using insecticides on crops. Bees are insects. All right, that one's a slam dunk. I think everybody who's listening to this podcast and watching this, whatever it is, this YouTube live thing, and all the people in chat right now would probably easily agree with that.
Yeah.
Number 12. Raising hives off the ground, like natural hives, reduces moisture problems in the hive. The higher, the better. Now, the thing that we do with our bee hut is that the platform is probably a good 1.5 to 2 feet off the ground. And then Jacqueline Freeman has a gazebo that's got a platform that's a good 2.5 to 3 feet off the ground. And I think she's got at least one colony that's in a tree that's a good 10 feet off the ground. But I do kind of think that, you start getting a colony that's like, 30 feet off the ground. I mean, that's starting to get a little bit like it's going to be difficult to monitor and work with that hive. Now, most bees, of course, are generally like a good 15 feet or higher up inside of a hollowed out part of a tree. Okay, number 13, sheltered hives, sometimes called bee huts, reduce bee stress and help keep the hive warmer in winter. I have heard, and I have not yet experienced this, but I have not put as much time into working with my bees as I would like. But I have heard of people that have gotten 5 times more honey harvest just from having a bee hut. A bee hut faces the southeast, so that way in the wintertime you get sun pretty much all day, and in the summertime you get the morning sun, but you through most of the day the hive is shaded, so making things much more comfortable.
Well, and protected from the rain.
True. So drier, we just talked about the importance of keeping things dry. Yeah. Number 14. Colonies that, let's see, number 13. So number 14, colonies that live in hollow tree trunks with 3 to 4 inch thick walls are stronger because they can better control their own temperature and moisture. Build thick-walled hives instead of scrawny conventional hive boxes. So one of the things that I've done is that we surround the hive with straw. We've got a couple straw bales there, and we pull the straw away a little bit in the summer to allow more cooling. And then we tuck them out close in the wintertime. Number 15. Mold is like the kiss of death for bees. If something is moldy, throw it away and replace it. Number 16. Conventional beekeepers open their hives for inspection weekly or bi-weekly. Bees in a proper home do best when they control their own environment with little or zero intervention. So we want to try to reduce the amount of times we open up the hive. Yeah. And so it's, I mean, part of it is like, okay, I want to check to see if the queen is there. And it's like, so they start pulling out each of the frames until they can find the queen. Oh, there she is. Okay, well, let's put it all back. And by pulling frames out and sticking them back in, and then pulling the top off and sticking it back on, we actually killed about 20 bees. But that's okay. They'll make more. It is a point of stress. Not to mention the fact that they kind of, keep the temperature inside the hive a very specific, temperature. And then when you're going and you're pulling this hive apart, then you're letting a lot of cold air inside. So it's kind of like you're disturbing the climate. And then they got to reset. They got to recover from your invasion. And so it's like this is setting the bees back. This is stressing them, which makes them susceptible to all sorts of illnesses, which supposedly is what you're doing, is you're checking for a variety of illnesses. Why are you checking for a variety of illnesses? And why did you ever get the idea that it was a good idea to check for these illnesses? And it's like, well, the answer to that is somebody is trying to sell you some kind of cure for a problem. And it's like, okay, so now you bought the cure, and it's like, okay, I see that they have this illness, so now I'm going to apply this cure. And so if you're not crawling in there all the time and checking, then how are you going to know that you need to buy their cure? And on top of that, of course, by checking so much, it makes it so that you're more likely to need the cure because you've made them sick by checking them.
Well, and then, like, the way that I look at it is all those points that you said. And then there's also the whole thing where it's like, I'm kind of lazy. Like, I can check less often. That's fine with me.
Permaculture is a more symbiotic relationship with nature, so I can be even lazier. So yeah, it turns out so often the lazy solution is the best solution.
Yes.
The checking your hive every week really benefits people who sell shit to supposedly cure bees of whatever ails them. So let's leave them alone and let them do their own thing. The last item, number 17, use organic or better practices in everything that you do, because it all comes back to the bees. And it's the same thing for all animals. It all comes back to every animal that you have in your system. I mean, we've got a couple of feral cats that hang out here a lot now, and they go away for 2 or 3 days at a time, and then they come and hang around with us again, and we worry. In fact, a couple years ago, there was a mama cat who had 2 kittens here, and all 3 of them died. And it's like, we never fed them anything, and it's like, so why did they die? And so we're guessing that they probably ate a mouse that ate some poison bait at some point in time. Right. And so we're worried about, feral cats being a vector to bring poisons on. But of course, now this is at base camp. So base camp is not 200 acres. It's much smaller. And so we do have neighbors, and cats and dogs come and go from our property from the neighbors. And so they're bringing less than organic stuff here. I think that if you have a cat and you're up on the lab, or if you're up on the lab and you know of a feral cat, I think that cat is probably not ever going to bring, like it's never going to eat a mouse that has been poisoned. For most people who have mice, their go-to is the poison bait.
Right.
And so, in which case, when your cats eat that, your cats die. And so this is, and then other people are like, oh, I sprayed, I had this insect problem, so I sprayed. And then, of course, the birds die. And the other predators of those insects all die. And so it's like, yeah, use organic or better practices in everything that you do, because it all comes back to the animals that you're caring for or that you're attempting to care for. So, oh, Jocelyn's on.
Yep, being helpful.
Oh, okay. So she's made a link to discussion about the Flow Hives, and it's like, any thoughts on the Flow Hive? Don't do the Flow Hive. I mean, just think about what all it does. I mean, it's like, oh, I got a Flow Hive in there, and I'm going to activate the Flow Hive so I get honey pouring out. By the way, it just took a whole bunch of brood and split them in half. Oh, well, I put a queen excluder in to make sure that it's only honey, and I'm not splitting the brood in half anymore. And it's like, somebody told me something, and I think it was probably Jacqueline, but I think I've heard it from multiple sources, and that is that the queen bee likes to go throughout the entire hive for reasons. And so at some point in time, we might learn what that is. But in a natural environment, there's no such thing as a queen excluder.
Right.
And so what we do is if we want to harvest honey and not accidentally harvest brood, we do a technique called, we look at it. This one's got brood, put it back. This one's all honey, so let's harvest this honey. So yeah, but the Flow Hives, that's a lot of plastic. And it's like, I think a lot of the stuff I'm trying to do is like, I mean, like right now I'm talking to you onto the YouTube thing. I have a laptop computer. It has a plastic case. I have not yet figured out how to get away from that plastic.
Yep.
But when doing the thing with honey, there is a way to get away from the plastic. I've got a way figured out. And that's to not use the Flow Hive and to not use plastic foundation. And there's a lot of other plastic things that are not used in my honeybee systems.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Flow Hive has a thing where it's like, look, you just, turn this thing and now honey just starts coming out. And I kind of feel like that's like, it's just not okay. It's like, there's so much wrong with that. And it's so unnatural. And it's a different kind of invasion. I mean, okay, so like, let's say you did the thing and the honey came out, and then you know what? In fact, I remember this. I remember this when I was like 12, maybe I was 11. My brother bought a case of soda pop cans, and and he and I had a lot of back and forth. I mean, we did what boys are supposed to do. We beat the shit out of each other on a regular basis. And so he wouldn't share with me, of course, which is perfectly reasonable because he bought them with his money and I bought other things with my money. And this was earned money. We didn't get an allowance or anything like that. So he bought all this pop, and so I remember getting several of his pops and poking a hole in the bottom and drinking the pop out of it, so that when he went to go get pop, it was an empty can with a hole in it. Oh, I was evil. But basically, that's what you're doing with the Flow Hive thing, and it's like, okay, so you got the honey to come out, and then you kind of like put it back into place, and you never opened up the hive. You just took that one super and kind of split it in such a way that you cracked open where the honey is stored. And then when you're all done, you put it back. And so it's like the bees come along and they go to get some honey and they open it up and it's like, hey, somebody, split the side of this cell and took the honey out. There's no honey in here. So you left all the stuff in there for holding the honey the cap is still on the honey, but there's not honey in it. I'm not even sure what would happen there. Does anybody know, anybody in the typey world here of the chat thing? Do you like, have people start to report like when they do this so that the bees fill a cell up with honey and then they cap it, and then you go and you take the honey out, but you leave it there with the cap on it. Are the bees like, I don't need to open that. That's full of honey. It's already capped. In which case, eventually, do they figure that the whole hive is full of honey and there's no more storage left? And then winter comes along and they're like suddenly discovering that they don't have near as much honey as they thought. I mean, what's going on in there? I wonder if people with flow hives are having some serious problems with their bees. Okay. Leaving behind the flow hive thing, for which I don't like. And I think I've probably got about 3 more hours to say on how I don't like flow hives. But skippity skip. We got 2 paragraphs left in this whole chapter. Like I said, very short chapter. By following these techniques, there could be 10% losses for the first 3 years as genetics get sorted out, and then there will be near 0 colony loss. 4 other chapters about animal care, chickens, cattle, hogs, and aquaculture were eliminated in favor of keeping this one, because this chapter paints a really good picture of the general permaculture approach to working with nature instead of against nature. This chapter is meant to be an example of animal care far better than what is commonly practiced in producing a large part of our food. This book is not about animal care, but about building a better world. And this part is about helping people understand a flavor of animal care that not only makes for healthier, happier animals, but a healthier, happier everything. Nurture nature, and nature nurtures us all. The end. That's our chapter for today. All right, what do we got for questions or comments or rude gestures?
Not too many rude gestures.
Okay. Do we have any questions? There's stuff. Somebody says no wax production, so I think they're probably talking about the flow hives. Yeah. Because it's all just plastic. So, yeah.
Somebody asked if we've tried a heat gun for decapping frames.
Did you say a heat gun, not a heat knife? No, I have not tried to use a heat gun for decapping.
They say the fastest way ever.
Huh. Well, might be something worth looking into. I've never tried it. Let's see. And so I see something about a mink, and I just want to say that I remember that thing years ago about how fur is murder, and I kind of feel like, well, why did they say that about fur, and they didn't say that about like meat, right? And it's like I kind of feel like, okay, there's probably horrible ways, and I think part of it is like, oh, the way that they're raising those animals is really awful, and it's kind of like, okay, can we raise those animals in a really good and healthy way? And now it seems like what most people wear, like if you go into the big city, and then what most people seem to wear as a coat is a leather coat or a petroleum coat. And so I kind of think to myself, like, well, wait a minute. So do people prefer petroleum-based clothing over? So first of all, there's the leather coat. It's like, okay, fur is bad, but leather is okay. And it does seem like there's going to be a lot of leather available because of how much beef people eat. And so, okay, all right. But still, I kind of think that, I would kind of like to, I feel like, because I've never, ever owned a fur coat or even a coat that had real animal fur on it. I kind of wonder, whether I would like that or not. But I kind of wonder if it would be part of a good approach. Like, is it something that would be better than the petroleum-based solutions? And so I think most coats that are warm are full of petroleum fluff. I mean, there's going to be stuff that's going to be wool, but those are very rare. It's difficult to find a wool coat.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, is my analysis correct? Is that, I mean, like, is pretty much universally anything that's an insulated coat it's a petroleum-based thing?
I think, aren't there also like down jackets?
It's true. There you go. There's a good one. And then, of course, is that not murder? In the same respect as fur is murder? I don't know. We've got such a negative thing about fur now. I kind of wonder if it's worth reevaluating. I think it is. I think it is worth reevaluating. I feel like it's time to bring back the fur coat.
Well, and evaluate how are we getting those animals, raising those animals, right?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the first stuff was like people just going into the natural ecosystems and like doing the animal version of clear cutting and just being like, okay, now we got all the furs. And yes, that is a problem.
Right.
But
right.
We can do to mitigate problems.
Okay. So, what do we got for questions? I mean, there's so much stuff here. I can't possibly read this all. This is like, I'm scrolling through it and it's like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. Most of it is probably bee puns.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any tips for a new city boy considering keeping bees for honey? Don't tell all the neighbors.
Well, I kind of feel like in our book, Build a Better World in Your Backyard, we do focus on, we do have a whole section of the book that's just about things that are in your home, another section that's just about having an urban backyard. And then we start moving into the space of like homesteading. And I was once asked to give a presentation, and I wrote a presentation. This is like 6 years ago. And I think I presented during the big tour about like what's more environmentally friendly. And I think they specifically asked for carbon footprint, which has a better carbon footprint, living in the city or living in the country. And so I spent 2 hours exploring this. And I mean, basically there's ways to do it in each. But since then, and especially as we're writing this book to such detail, I think it's entirely possible to do poorly in both. So, for example, you can live in the country, not plant any trees, and commute to your job in the city 5 days a week. And so that's going to have a pretty nasty footprint. But of course, the things I advocate are going to be building community, growing a big garden, and having enough acres that you can plant a jungle of a forest. And so, I mean, I think at one point in the book we talk about a pocket full of seeds and a half a day can offset your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
And then if you do that, 12 times a year, you're now offsetting the carbon footprint of a dozen people. So very difficult to do in the city to be able to do that. But if you're living in the country and you've created a life that's so magnificent and you've got like a vehicle you can drive to town in, but you just don't because where you are, things are so good, then I think it's the answer is quite simple, that country living, you have the potential to do far better with country living than with city living.
Absolutely.
So the people living in the city, of course, have the option to be able to not own a car and to walk wherever they go. And so then, eliminate that. There's a variety, but you still got to bring that food to those people, and the carbon footprint and the petroleum footprint and all the footprints that go with that food is very significant. So having your own garden to feed yourself, even if you can feed only half of your food needs, has far greater impact than almost anything else. All right.
Okay.
What else we got in this big, long list of chatty bits?
I think we've just about covered it.
Really? There's a lot of chatty bits there.
There's most of them talking about cats and minks, I think.
And then there was the thing about the pirates.
Pirates, yeah.
I've
been reading it all.
September 19th, I think, is Talk Like a Pirate Day. Or maybe whoever asked me to talk like a pirate, maybe they're a Pastafarian, where the pirate stuff is a big part of being a Pastafarian. You are familiar with his noodliness, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so? The flying spaghetti monster?
It rings a bell.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess so. There's this silly thing about some child was asked to write a report about a religion, and he made up the flying spaghetti monster, and he got an F. So now it's turned into this enormous thing. And it's evolved, and so they I think the Pastafarians try to speak like a pirate, or their traditional garb is pirate garb, something like that.
Okay.
I don't understand all the details, but I do know that like Talk Like a Pirate Day is somehow tied into being a Pastafarian from the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. You could write that down if you feel like you need. Okay, for this chapter, it's available now on the Secret Inner Circle forum, and one of the things that we need to get all of the little links for the footnotes. So there's probably going to be 20 little links in our chapter that go to different threads at permies.com. And then I think that we're going to do this again because we got this working. I think it's working pretty good. So I think that we're going to be doing this again. We'll announce it to all of the Patreon peeps to let them know what is going to be the date and time when we're going to record the next one. And we're doing that one. I'm thinking we're doing it with Jacob Lund Fisker, author of Early Retirement Extreme. And what's the name of that chapter we're going to be covering? Radically
Deviant Financial Strategies.
And I believe that chapter is like 8 pages long. So
we might need to budget a couple hours for that.
Yeah, it's going to be like 2.5 times, 3 times bigger than what we just did. I think that there's a lot of stuff in that I have not yet shared in podcasts, and we'll have Jacob on the podcast with us because we are going to talk about Early Retirement Extreme, and Jacob's going to review the stuff that I've written that is not in his book. And so, and of course, we're going to strongly advocate that people get Jacob's book, Early Retirement Extreme. It is an excellent book. So I think we're all done here. Yes?
Yes, we are done. Thanks. And yeah, give us some feedback. And there'll be a thread on Hermes too for the audio or for the podcast version of this video. So that's another place you can come and give us feedback if you're not in the secret inner circle.
Oh, right. Right. If you get on the Patreon stuff, we'll tell you the date and time of when we're going to be doing this with Jacob Lundfisker.
Yeah.
And so Finn Bear says, you guys better talk about Bitcoin. It's not in the chapter.
Oh.
Bitcoin, yeah, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is not in the chapter. Bitcoin, I kind of watched the price of Bitcoin a little bit. I got paid for some stuff with Bitcoin several years ago, and so then I have Bitcoin, and then I watched it go up to like almost $20,000 per Bitcoin, and now I think it's like down to like $4,000, maybe 3,000 something. It's like, wow, it's really dropped a lot. But I am looking for, and I do know that also there is a mountain of misinformation about Bitcoin, just dumb stuff. Clearly, there are people out there that do not want people to get in on Bitcoin. But I think that there's going to be a lot of future in Bitcoin. I'm not sure how exactly it's going to work, and I'm kind of curious about some of the details. But it's definitely a coming thing, and I am looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. But no, I don't feel like I'm a Bitcoin expert. I think I know enough about Bitcoin to be able to tell people, like, you know, what are you? No, that article is for dumb fucks who don't know anything about Bitcoin, and it's wrong. It's misinformation. It's fear and uncertainty. I mean, if you think about it, the big banks, they are not going to like Bitcoin. There's a lot of people that think that Bitcoin is for suckers, and it's like, okay, that's fine. Then don't get any. And at the same time, apparently there's some countries that have been going through some financial crises, and they've been using it. But I think Bitcoin isn't necessarily about in your backyard. Maybe it's a thing you can do. Maybe it's
the whole idea is that it's a massively distributed thing. Right?
True, and it really can't be unmassively distributed. And so, like you can't like blow up a place and then it's gone. It's like, no, it's very resilient. And then of course the people who behave poorly around dollars or other monies, they're going to be very upset at people using Bitcoin, which makes it kind of funny. Now, if we're going to shoot the stink eye at big banks, I got to say, I love Kickstarter. It's like I remember when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to start a business and I didn't have enough money, and so I cut my hair, and I went to a bank, and in the end, and then of course they make you wait to talk to some person who they put on a high pedestal, and you're groveling to the bank for a loan, and they're going to make money off of your loan, and in the end they wouldn't give me the loan unless I had somebody who had Epic Coin cosign, and so that other person took all the risk. And then of course the bank made a lot of money off of me, whereas the cosigner took all the risk and didn't make any money. And it's like, So with Kickstarter, oh man, I just so enjoy it. And so of course we're gonna do a Kickstarter. I just kind of feel like every time you do a Kickstarter, you kick a banker in the nuts.
And on that though.
If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com. We talk about honeybees, homesteading, and permaculture all the time.
Bye.